I'm a big Fnaf fan. Of course, not as big of a fan as you, nerd, with the glasses or without the glasses or whatever. But I played Five Nights at Freddy's 6, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator. And I have to say, it might be one of the scariest games I've ever played. And here's why. Now first off, we're going to start with uncertainty and the unknown. Of course, this means fear often arises from what we don't understand or can't predict. The fear of the unknown can be powerful as our imagination tends to fill in gaps with worst case scenarios to make sure that we're prepared if the worst does happen. This is something that I think a lot of people should understand, and just know that that's actually kind of really crazy that our mind does that, but it's just to protect us, right? Of course, the way that FNAF 6 does it is really good, right? The uncertainty and the unknown is kind of what the whole game premise is about. You are starting off your shop and you're just thrown in there, right? You have no idea what you're trying to do, and the game kind of naturally progressively gets hard, and that's because of the way that the game was set up, but also the uncertainty of what you're doing and how it has its own consequences is kind of that unknown aspect. Now, of course, the next one is going to be threat to safety. The fear can stem from situations or stimuli that pose a threat to one's physical or emotional well-being. This includes danger to one's life, health, or physiological stability. Now, what this kind of means is, for me to break it down for you, is you kind of put yourself in the position that you are the person in the chair sitting in that office room trying to survive and get your job done, right? I think that it's important to kind of put yourself in that chair and understand, how can I survive to my best ability? Because if you're not doing that and you're just being playing all silly-nilly and not actually trying to have fun with the game that you're experiencing, then this one could mean absolutely nothing to you. But if you truly do go, okay, how do I survive? I need to survive. Instincts only, let's survive this, right? Then all of a sudden you're feeling like you're being attacked and your life is in danger. You need to somehow not go insane after doing this, because this is insane, right? You're trying to survive. It's the survival instincts that I think start kicking with that fight or flight type instinct. Next is going to be surprise and shock, right? Which is the sudden and unexpected events or revelations can be terrifying. Jump scares in horror movies, for example, work indispensable, where it is just bam and it gets your heart pumping. And I think that's really important for horror games, right? If you didn't have any jump scares and it was just somebody staring, it's scary. That is scary. It's the fact that whenever they jump or something scary happens, right? That surprise happens. That's what also gets you scared. If there was just a FNAF game where you couldn't actually die, right? Let's say FNAF 3, right? You can die in FNAF 3, but my point is, for FNAF 3, you didn't have to be too worried, right? Almost everything couldn't kill you except for one guy, and he only came later in the game. And so, although the shock and surprise when those phantoms in FNAF 3 actually hit you, they were still surprising, but they weren't as dangerous to your threat of safety, and they weren't really that valuable in the game and the way it worked. Vulnerability, right? The feeling of helpless or vulnerable in a situation can intensify fear. This can include being isolated, trapped, or unable to escape a threatening situation. Basically, what that means is you are trapped in a little desk space with vents connected to you, and you are vulnerable as heck. You can only see one thing at a time, this being either your monitor, the left of you, the right of you. And on top of this vulnerability, you don't have any sight, but also you can only use your ears as a way to hear people. And if you miss some sort of cue, you're done for, right? And this also gives that you're trapped because you have to wait before you're done with all your tasks in order to leave, right? Among Us tasks. Sorry, that was so whatever. I do get into this a little bit more, but we'll leave that for later. Darkness and isolation is going to be the next one. It's the absence of light, and being alone in darkness or secluded places can evoke fear because it heightens our senses and imagination of what can be in that dark, or what do I have to prepare for, right? It's the same thing as the unknown and the uncertainty of the unknown, except this time we're specifically pointing out what darkness and isolation can do to somebody. It also kind of creates this sense of, I am alone currently, but what if I'm not? Which is another one of those, the first points, which is the unknown. And you kind of do know in this game that you are, well, you aren't alone, but in the first night, if you don't do anything, then you feel like you're not alone. Even though the game says, oh, you're alone, it's fine. You're like, something's gonna happen because of that uncertainty, because I'm vulnerable, and because the darkness is surrounding me and my imagination is going crazy, right? Next, you have inherent human fears, right? Certain fears seem to be hardwired into human psychology, such as fears of snakes, spiders, heights, or loud noises. These fears may have evolved as survival instincts, and it's kind of the same way in this game, right? You're just trying to survive, you're not trying to die. It's once you know what the enemy, the warning, or what's going to kill you, you want to stay away from that as far as possible, which is kind of what that human fear is. Now, number 7 is going to be creepy or uncanny elements. Things that are eerie, such as somebody staring at you. Things that are unsettling, such as the ocean for some people, or unnatural, this being aliens. And just overall creepy things like dolls. I mean, it's because they have some sort of familiarity, but they're not familiar. It's kind of the back rooms. It's kind of like, have you ever seen those pictures where they say, name one thing in here, and it's just a bunch of things that look like things that should exist in the real world, but they're not things, usually AI generated. And that's just kind of what it is. It's the same thing for animatronics. You see an animatronic, you think it looks like a bear, a bunny, a chicken, a fox, something along those lines, but it's not, right? It has some form of naturality, but it's not natural. And it goes the same thing. They're all robots. You know what a humanoid robot looks like, but those aren't right. And of course, in this game, it's a little bit different because you don't necessarily see them all the time. But whenever you see that caution sign, you know what a caution sign means. And yeah, it means danger, right? So that's why you would get that creepy or uncanny, feel to it. Next, you have physiological horror. The fear of the mind, including themes like insanity, loss of control, or being haunted by one's past, can be deeply unsettling. Now, I think that the main things for us to focus on is loss of control or being haunted by one's past. Because, see, whenever you feel like you don't have control of a situation, you start to get panicky because you need control in order to survive in situations where you're dealing with stress. But if you don't have control over that situation, then your stress levels get even higher. And I feel like also it's funny for me to say, but being haunted by one's past, that's the whole point of the game, right? Some guy killed some kids. I know that sounds really PG-13. I should have warned you guys. Some guy killed some kids, and then, you're kind of being haunted by that past, which can be deeply unsettling, to be honest with you. Also, it's the theme of insanity. You're constantly doing something over and over again, hoping for for something different to happen, depending on how many times you've died. But if you don't learn from that, then you are going insane. Anyways, we are at number 9, cultural and personal factors. Now, this includes cultural beliefs, personal experiences, and upbringing can shape what individuals find frightening. For example, one culture finds terrifying may not have the same effect in another. It's kind of like if you take a picture of 1, 2, 3,000 years ago, there might have been some sort of human sacrificing, there might have been something, whatever you take a picture of, it might have been cultural appropriate back then, but nowadays if you were to see somebody being human sacrificed, we would of course stop that, because some things were appropriate back then that aren't appropriate now, and it works the same way in other cultures, right? Some people think that walking, talking animals is actually fine. For me personally, though, if a walking or talking animal talked to me, I would probably either run, try to fight it, or I don't even know. I would act not smart. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like not smartly is the right word to use there. I would not act smartly if a walking animal went up to me. And if you go, what, like 5,000 years in the future, there's probably gonna be animals that are robots that walk around. That would be crazy now that I think about it. Whatever. I think you guys see my point of that one. Number 10 is gonna be sound and music. Of course, by this I mean sound design, including eerie or creepy music and unsettling noises, plays a significant role in making a scary game. Because not only does sound design go really far away whenever only one of your senses is sound, but also sound design goes really far away in general. In almost all media, you are not able to, use like three of your five senses. This being, you're not able to really smell anything. You're not really able to touch anything. You're not really able to taste anything. The only thing you can really do is sound and like hear stuff, and sight, which is see stuff. And I think that on the sound aspect, Fnaf 6 goes a long way. And I think that a lot of games can actually take into consideration what Fnaf 6 does in order to make their games sound beautifully. And matter of fact, just to prove this point a little bit more, I'm going to spend maybe just 10 seconds out of the video to show you some of the sounds in this game, right? I'm going to cut them up. They're going to be pretty fast, so, don't miss them.
Document results.
Another one is going to be 11, of course. Suspension and tension. Building up anticipation and suspension can intensify fear. Knowing that something frightening is coming, but not when or where, can be particularly effective. And this is why they have the game split up into kind of two ways, right? You have the moment where you're building stuff and you're trying to, make everything work. And, well, it really doesn't create any fear. Of course, some of the mini games should create fear because they are scary, but they don't. Not as well as the nighttime shift, which does build up that suspension and tension. This also plays into that sound and music. Whenever you hear something, you get that tension. Whenever you see one of those warning signs, you get that tension. And depending on what happens, you also get that suspension. And I think that the most important one is 12th, because this one, if you don't have realism, which is going to be number 12, then you don't have a good game, right? Sometimes the more realistic and relatable a fear is, the scarier it becomes. Real life scenarios or events that are portrayed in a terrifying manner can be highly effective. By this, I do mean fear, just like almost every other emotion, is kind of based on the person, right? And so whenever it comes down to it, if somebody feels like FNAF isn't real enough, then why would they care about what happens? They're just not going to be scared of it unless they're able to get themselves sucked into what actually, how real it is, how they want to take that. Then they'll actually start, okay, I want to live like this. I want to experience this in the game, right? Of course, I'm not talking about real life. I'm talking about in the game. Whenever they start experiencing that in the game, they're putting themselves in how they would feel whenever they're playing the game. That's whenever they actually start feeling a certain way, and that's whenever the horror actually starts to kick in. And yeah, I just wanted to comment on those. Now, I'm going to be talking a little bit about why I feel like FNAF 6 as a game isn't as popular as the other FNAF games. Now, I'm not saying it's not popular at all, but I'm just going to dig into it a little bit. See, I feel like the important thing about FNAF games is they're more of a strategy than anything, right? And that's what makes FNAF 6 so much different. Because instead of it being a strategy game, in the very first, I'd say throughout the whole entire game actually, that you The only strategy that you could really have is to just not get every animatronic. But if you don't get all of them, then you don't get the true ending, which is honestly not the point of the game. The point of the game is to collect all of them, get all the endings, and just kind of like experience the scariness, right? And so this leads us to having kind of a harder strategy. Of course, you can make up a strategy by putting your lure in a certain spot for a certain amount of time and then upgrading the printing and all that stuff, just so then you know the upgrades for your office, and also making sure you flash for 3 seconds down left, 2 down right once you hear a sound or whatever that be. But in the very beginning, it's just not as strategic as the other games. A good example of this is Fnaf 3, which I would personally say isn't the most frightening Fnaf, right? Yeah, matter of fact, I think it's one of the... I would say it's the least scary, but security breach exists, and that one's honestly going to be, for me personally, the least scary, right? But Fnaf 3, there's only one thing that could kill you, and you just had to make sure it doesn't reach you, right? You could literally go the whole time with the phantom animatronics, like constantly doing stuff with you, and it didn't matter as much. But by night 4, of course, it was very important for you to learn and understand how to stop not dying, right? But that's why I feel like FNAF 6 is so much different, right? First, you have ads, and these are very detrimental because ads just absolutely kill you, right? And this is something that you're accepting. You're saying, okay, I'm willing to I'm willing to get money from this. However, I know that this is going to hurt me in the long run, right? To fully experience it. And it's also kind of cool because it reminds me of Custom Night in the way that you're able to set up how difficult your game is by setting which animatronic you want and what level. In the same way, FNAF 6 does it, right? You're able to actually select like what animatronics you want and how hard it is, because you're able to accept ads and all that stuff. Of course, it is a little different because you can't just accept all ads at the same time, making it kind of hard. And just the same way that you can't really buy all of the office upgrades at the same time, right? That's something that you can buy later on, which would make it a little bit easier, but first you have to know what the office upgrades are. On top of that, you can also make it super hard by not buying any office upgrades and trying to get as many animatronics in there as possible. I feel like that's just something that a lot of people don't think about whenever they think about FNAF 6, that it's actually a lot different than other games, because other games, you just progress. FNAF 1, 2, and 3, you just progress and the nights would slowly get harder and harder. And this is a good thing because then you're able to learn what happens and all that stuff. But for FNAF 6, it just drops you in, and it's because you don't have to learn anything, you just have to trial and error, right? And that's how you're gonna learn it, which I think just makes it a lot more scary, because it's kind of the way that the game is developed is telling you you're going to die, and that's how you get better. Of course, this is all personal preference, and I think that the whole part of it being scary is personal preference as well. So if you feel like this actually makes it not scary because you're able to just make it easy and breeze through it, then that's completely up to you, right? I'm just kind of giving you my information, especially because I feel like not enough people know about FNAF 6, right? It's just not, I feel like it was kind of falling off, and I'll get to that later, of course. Now there's a couple of major ones. They're all just very fun, and they really are different, right? You have the bankruptcy ending, which is an ending achieved by running out of money, and the slideshow that plays. The tutorial unit gives a certificate of bankruptcy and fires you. You have the insanity ending. This ending is fulfilled by buying the egg baby, which is data archived in the office. A button which is usually green is now blue. Pressing this starts an audio recording called HRY223 to start to play, in which Henry talks to you about the past with William Afton, his regrets and his plans. It's a whole lot of yada yada, right? You have the blacklisted one, which happens whenever you have over 50 risk or more by the end of the game, or if your liability or hazards or whatever. Then you also have the mediocre ending, which is achieved by not salvaging all the animatronics, and then the bad ending, which is achieved by not salvaging any animatronics, right? Of course, I also feel like these are kind of like the other FNAF games, how they have different endings, but these ones are completely up to you, and it's not necessarily like you can totally play through these and get these. And I don't know, I feel like these are just different from the other games. Like for FNAF 1, I guess it didn't have too many crazy endings. Actually, it only had like maybe two, that being the Golden Freddy one. But but like here's a good example. Like Security Breach and its endings, right? Its endings seemed kind of mediocre, and not mediocre endings, but like the way that they were played out, they were just like, wow, okay, this is what happens. Wow, okay, that's what happens. But the way that you got it and all that wasn't like too intense. But this one, you have to like actually go out of your way to get all of these endings. Except for the first two being the bad and the mediocre one. But you have to really try to get the other three. And seeing how there's like maybe four of them, or four others, so being six in total, or maybe even seven. I can't remember the exact amount, but it's either six or seven total endings. Then, well, what I'm trying to say is it's just different than a lot of other games, and you actually have to go out of your way just to achieve them, which I guess is like a lot of other games. I don't know, man. Just play the game. It's fun. I guess I kind of ran out of things to say. I wanted to show you guys a picture because I thought it was hilarious. I am a college student, so anything you do helps, such as subscribing, liking, or even because you watched all the way through. I really do appreciate that. But look at this hilarious picture. Now, I don't really have a lot to say other than join my Discord. We have so many people in there, and I love talking to you guys. Second of all, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And lastly, I'm Dark, and I'm out.